Mėly kolegos,
Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the hall once again. On the occasion of this meeting, we have a good message for you today. You will receive the family photo of this meeting. I hope that after lunch you are now even more energetic for the second session, during which we will talk about digitalization of a language as a part of cultural heritage. If you feel tired, please raise your hands. Oh, this was a joke. You don't need to. Ladies and gentlemen, I now give the floor to our first keynote speaker, Head of the Research and Innovation Sector of the Unit Data Value Chain of the Director General for Communications Networks, Content and Technology of the European Commission, Mr. Kimmo Rossi. Mr. Kimmo Rossi will speak on multilingualism in Europe and digitalization initiatives. The floor is yours.
Dear members of parliament, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, in the recent speech on the State of the Union, the Commission's President, José Manuel Barroso, said, quote, "We know that in the future trade will be more and more digital. Isn't it a paradox that we have an internal market for goods, but when it comes to digital market, we have 28 national markets? How can we grab all the opportunities of the future that are opened by the digital economy if we do not conclude this internal market?" End of quote. So languages are clearly a cultural and societal richness to Europe, but the multitude of languages also makes it difficult to conclude an internal market, especially online market, so the digital single market. For example, if I want to buy something from a Polish online shop and the web page is only in Polish and I don't understand the language, my shopping certainly stops there. This is a missed opportunity for the single market, of course, and there are plenty of such missed opportunities. In fact, 80% of European e-commerce websites are in one language only, so they are serving one language area, one nation, one region only. This is even more alarming as all areas of commerce and business are moving to the online space, and they rely increasingly on consumers serving themselves in online shops and portals. In the internet era, the amounts of text that we need to translate, they are far too vast for any number of translators to translate. The web content is constantly growing, and it becomes more and more multilingual. For example, the European Union's website, the Europa website, has some 6 million pages of content. If we want to translate all of that into the 24 official languages of the Union, it means some 140 million pages to translate. This work would require some 100,000 translators working full-time for 1 year. So now it's obvious why this website has not been translated into all the 24 languages. In general, buyers of translations are more cost-aware than ever. Also, translations are needed almost instantly. I need my translation now, otherwise it's useless. It doesn't serve any purpose anymore. As a result of all this, too much interesting text never gets translated. Or it is translated by poor machine translation that distorts the message. And then we try to figure out what it means. This problem is, of course, more prominent for smaller languages, like the Baltic languages, Finnish, Hungarian, Maltese, Irish, and so on. But actually, technology can help a lot to bridge the gap between supply and demand of translation services. At the same time, it helps the small languages. Machine translation is revolutionizing the way people find and use information in the internet. Unfortunately, most of the online translators, they work best when translating into English or into another major world language. If I want to use Google or Microsoft Translator to translate into Finnish or into Lithuanian, the result may be unreadable, as Mr. Saudargas said in his speech, and even at the best there are errors in almost every sentence. But of course, even poor machine translation is good because it makes these languages accessible. So what does the European Commission do to address these gaps and these problems of the digital single market? And now I'm mostly concentrating on what we are doing at DG Connect, at a department where I work. In the 7th Framework Programme for ICT Research and Development, language technologies have already been supported by over 150 million euros. So it's 7 years of operation, a bit more than 20 million euro per year in FP7, and also in the CIP program. As a result, we have arrived a huge step closer to a Europe without language barriers. Promising pilots have created automated translation solutions for less widely spoken languages, and we have systems that let citizens and small companies customize their own machine translation systems and tailor them to their own text types, like the Let's MT system that Andres Vasiliev was describing. We have speech-to-speech translation prototypes like the EU Bridge project. Part of this 150 million euro investment has been used to set up MetaShare, an integrated repository for language resources. It's a good start. It already has over 2,000 resources, language resources, but it still needs to be completed and complemented. We have also created an alliance, the MetaNet, which unites research in linguistics, language technology, and created links to the guardians of the 24 European official languages in the member states. The work done so far, it forms a solid basis for the missing mile that we have to pass before language barriers disappear from the digital market. To do this, we have 3 main tools: Horizon 2020, the Connecting Europe Facility, or the CEF as we call it, and the structural funds. Horizon 2020 unites the research and innovation programs that were previously separate. So FP7 and the CIP program. Now there is only one program, Horizon 2020. It allows better integration of the different phases in the life cycle of technology. That this should allow smoother passage of research results into innovative pilot projects and better solutions for the citizens. So in the Horizon 2020, it's a research program and innovation program. We can search for new approaches, the new breakthroughs that Mr. Saudargas was also referring to, working maybe more efficiently than the machines before, and also more closely how the human brain works. So that's Horizon 2020 program is for such new approaches. But to complete the technology life cycle, research and innovation must be followed by effective deployment. We must produce cost-effective services that citizens and companies need to provide the ground for growth, jobs and prosperity. This is what the Connecting Europe Facility is about. The Commission proposal for the Connecting Europe Facility foresees substantial funding to build pan-European digital service infrastructures. These infrastructures will ensure, for example, that any European company can easily participate in a call for tender launched in another country where the customers are, or that patients can receive the right treatment or medication anywhere in the EU, or that workers can settle in any country where they want to work in the EU. These pan-European digital services must, of course, speak the language of their users, so the language of all Europeans. This is why the Connecting Europe Facility legislative proposal contains a specific building block called automated translation. It is called a building block in this legislative proposal because it will become an integral part of all digital services and will make them multilingual. For example, translating tender specifications or medical prescriptions into all EU languages in these online systems. EU funding programs are a good catalyst for groundbreaking research, innovation and pan-European infrastructures, but they are not enough. We have to do more to move from roadmaps to useful systems and services, from policies to added value for taxpayers. And this is where we need more collaboration and coordination between EU programs and national activities in the EU member states. We should learn to work in synchrony for a common goal. This is especially true for language technologies. For example, if we want to develop powerful automated translation technology for Lithuanian, we need as raw material Lithuanian language resources. For example, collections of texts and terminologies. These, in turn, are more likely to be found and to be managed in Lithuania and not in Brussels. What can be done at EU level is to create a common repository and infrastructure that allows all these linguistic assets to be shared and allows powerful translation technology to be developed equally for all EU languages, not only for big languages. EU member states need to be empowered to do more and to decide more about their own language resources. This, of course, comes with responsibility on results. We need local, regional and national initiatives to complement the more centralized EU programs on language technology. This is because your own language is the prime interest of your country or your region. By working together, we can support each other and make sure that all languages are preserved in the online space. By doing so, we make sure that valuable and useful online services are available to all Europeans, no matter what language they speak. So this is about successfully to digitize all our languages. And we need a mobilization of all national efforts. We need more coherence between the national efforts, also those funded through the regional funds, because there are huge financial possibilities in the regional funds. In the current planning period, there was 15 billion euro available only for ICT projects in structural funds. 15 billion. And some member states even have difficulties to spend all this money. But this is an area where certainly language technology and language resource development can be very fruitful. But it has not been very effectively used in the current planning period, but we can try to improve that in the next financial framework. To conclude, I wish to thank and congratulate the Lithuanian presidency and the Lithuanian parliament for their great efforts for the cause of European multilingualism. I also thank for this opportunity to present and explain the European initiatives and my view of our common challenges in the future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Kimmo Rossi, for your excellent presentation, reminding us of the fact that in order to walk the walk and not only talk the talk, the EU member states, all EU member states, need to coordinate action and work together I give the floor now to our next keynote speaker, Chair of the MetaNet Executive Board and Coordinator of MetaNet and Time for Me, Professor Hans Uškareit. Professor, the floor is yours. Laba dien.
Do you know what this is? This is neither a linguist nor a computer scientist, but both. So I'm from Germany, and I have worked for the past 25 years in this area of technology development in the United States, most of the time now in Europe, partially at the university, at a research center, and partially also in starting companies, also in industry. We, in our field, we are extremely excited about the good times for our field. We are at a point now when the technology, both hardware and software, is coming to a point where many things are possible that we never thought were possible before. Yeah? So you can talk to your car, you can, in your voice, you can speak to machinery. In our lab, you should come. There are robots that people talk to. Yeah, the robots take orders and run around and answer in a clumsy way, of course. But it's all coming in a few years. It will be all in the households. The search engines are improving, going to semantic search, where you don't just search for strings, but you search for real content. And machine translation is getting better and better. And nevertheless, our European researchers are at the time extremely worried, not because of jobs anymore. There are so much problems with jobs for young people. Our young people have not the slightest problems getting jobs independent of. Yeah, so they are hired immediately. So they are hired by Microsoft and Google and Nuance and the big companies. So we don't have any jobless graduates. This is not our worry. Our worry right now is that we are afraid that we cannot do enough and fast enough for Europe for solving three major problems that exist, three major problems in our field. And so we got together. I will mention these three problems in a moment. So we got together. We formed a network of excellence that was then also initially funded in its build-up phase by the European Union. It has now 60 research centers in 34 countries, and in all of the countries that are represented here, we have very strong centers that help us, even have contributed to the work I'm going to report on. Around this network of excellence, mainly research, we have built something we call META, above, yeah, so Multilingual Europe Technology Alliance with another 750 organizations, small companies, stakeholder companies, language communities, language institutes, and so on, so that are around. Yeah? So, and in MetaNet, we have done a very serious survey on the state of the art, on the degree to which European languages are supported for well-being in the digital age. And before I describe these findings in detail, let me tell you that we identified three major problems. So one major problem is that after opening the borders for goods, for finances, for people in the European Union, and after information technology has made the world of information borderless, you can reach every information everywhere in the world, there are still remaining borders, and those are our language borders. Those are the last remaining borders. So when we have an accident in Japan, Fukushima, then the people in Europe are discussing it and want to find out what does it mean for our own energy politics. How should we change? Should we change? Do we have to take action? And what happens is the French people discuss it, the Greek people discuss it, the Portuguese people discuss it, but each in their own language, only among themselves. There's no discussion across. and lots of information that should be translated for the European citizen and for European companies, for business, that should be available in all languages, never reaches the end. Lots of goods, products, services never reach the recipient in some countries because it's not available in the language of the citizens and of the customers. So the language borders are really keeping us from realizing the single digital market, the free information, the free flow of thought, knowledge, and solution building, in new forms of democracy. So we are all hoping that information technology permits new forms of combinations of representative and direct democracy, but not across language boundaries, not yet. So the second problem that we identified is disadvantages for European industry. European industry not having a huge single language start market, but having a start market also of a good size, but in many, many languages, really creates that this fragmentation of languages really creates a competitive disadvantage. So we have to help our industries to also have a very strong home market, and help them to overcome language boundaries. And also help our industry to have for each of these languages, for each of the target languages, the best language technology support. The same support that's as good as the support for English. So, and the third problem is now connected with the different size of the languages. When we surveyed 31 languages, we published a white paper for each of these languages, and more than 200 people worked on the survey, and about an average of 7 authors per survey, and many people in your countries contributed very valuable information. After that, that was discussed at many places, and we had a calibration meeting to compare the results. And in the end, we couldn't help it. The results were not all that nice. Of the 34 languages, it turned out that 21 languages are not really well supported. So now let me jump to this. I jumped over a couple of things to make it faster. So if you look at this, so we had a calibration meeting in Berlin. All these people here, they sat together from all the different countries, and they struggled and fought about the results. And then after that, the following came up. So we had 4 categories. Let me check the categories: machine translation, speech processing, text analysis, and resources, language resources like corpora, dictionaries, thesauri, and so on. And now we see how languages are covered. No language is covered excellently that you just have to take any machine translation. Not even English is good enough. So, but then when it comes to good, maybe English is good, but moderate, maybe French and Spanish. A couple of other languages with machine translation are fragmentary. Even German is by far not as good as our, it belongs to the languages that are not in this benevolent class for language technology, for machine translation, and many, many languages, among them Lithuanian, Latvian, Irish, and so on, are in the weak or no support class. The same is true for speech processing, slightly different results. For text analysis, it looks a little bit better because in text analysis, more languages are at least in the fragmentary support class. And when it comes to language resources, again, we have a similar picture that the majority of languages is not sufficiently supported. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean that these languages are threatened to die out. No, that doesn't mean there are enough speakers of these languages. There are much smaller language communities that survive. But not every language is equally present in the digital sphere. And we had a very good talk by András Kornai of the Hungarian Academy of the Sciences, who conducted some studies on social media to see which language is alive in the young generation, contributing to the world's knowledge and contributing to social media. And it turned out that you could really see drastic differences, and you could observe digital language death. Fortunately, not for any of the major EU languages, but we see for some of the languages that are dying in the digital age, that means the young people are not speaking that language when they go online, when they talk. Some of these languages that are dying in the digital era have shown the same signs of under-support that now some of the European languages we surveyed exhibit. So it's reason really for worries. So if we take then the composite picture, then we see a picture as the following. English is in top class, not surprising. Then Dutch, French, German, Italian, and Spanish are in the next class. Then we get another class of languages, and then weak and no support and fragmentary still for many languages. So, but now the insight came after we studied it a little bit and studied development that worried us even more than the differences, because we have differences in gross national product, in average income, in size of the countries, in everything. So why? But what worried us most was that we observed that the gap is not closing, but it's widening. So the distance between English, for instance, and the other languages is getting bigger and not smaller. So several languages, such as Icelandic, Latvian, Lithuanian, Maltese, received the weakest score, and 21 languages really in danger. But we looked at publications. We looked at where do the new results in technology come from. And we checked now between 2008, 2010, the 5 most prominent conferences and journals in the area, and we looked how is research on the different European languages represented in top-level research. And then we saw English first, no surprise. Then you see on the screen some Chinese has overtaken German 2 years ago, Spanish, French, Japanese, Arabic, but now go on and see where the other languages are, and you see that many of these European languages are not represented there in research at all by any major results. That doesn't mean that there's no good work there, but it's so little compared, it's too small. It didn't make it to the top-level journals, and it's not represented at all. And these differences are too big. You would expect differences, but not that big. So then we got together again with industry, with researchers, and we formulated a strategic research agenda that addresses this problem, this very problem, the 3 problems that we identified. We discussed the results at 83 conferences, and we presented the technology vision. We identified 3 priority themes. One that we call now maybe a little bit, it sounds maybe a little bit, thank you. Is that my bell? No, not my bell. Thank you. You tell me when to stop, please. Don't be polite. Don't be polite. Oh, this was your bell. I didn't call you. Okay. So that was so there's translingual cloud. It sounds a little futuristic, but it's actually something that together with today's cloud technology options will be doable. Now we need the language technology, namely a cloud of services, a cloud of clouds of many services, publicly, openly provided, but also commercially provided services that enable the translation of every type of text and speech at any place very fast as possible. And actually, you could start building this infrastructure even without technology, even with human translators. You could start already, because we discussed at this conference sometimes the need in police stations, in courtrooms, in hospitals, to get translators for smaller languages. If a Latvian goes to Ibiza and gets hurt on the beach, not clear that there's another Latvian around or a Latvian person to translate. So we need this, but then piece by piece we can fill and add, complement this human service by machine services. And machinery can come in and really help in productivity. Okay, so that's the distant goal, but I think first steps need to be done very, very fast in order to have web services tap into this service and provide the services in the different languages. The second area is social intelligence, helping people using social media, discussion fora, and so on, work together, as opposed to business intelligence, military intelligence, and security intelligence, which bring information for some decision makers to improve the decisions. Social intelligence is different in that it also provides information, knowledge to the people down there, to the clients, to the customers, to the consumers, to the citizens, and help them to make better decisions. Then, because there's one thing that is worse than a massive, that is much worse than the worst form of representative democracy, and that's a direct democracy with uninformed citizens. That would give very bad results. So the citizens, the decision makers, the customers should also be empowered to make good decisions, and collectively better forms of decisions will be made. And the third area is socially aware interactive assistance. I won't have time to talk about it, but it's an exciting topic. It involves something like Siri, like the Siri on the iPhone, but socially aware, thinking, planning with you, and so on. So those are maybe more long-range topics, but we could start with translation integrated in many services right away. Getting services that are now not offered in all of the languages through a translingual cloud, through a translation cloud in the different languages. So that means that the future internet and the multilingual web will not just be multilingual, it will be cross-lingual. The web as the main means of communication, storing knowledge, accessing knowledge and information will at the same time be not the instrument but the means, the medium for translation, for crossing. You go in with your language, but you receive your stuff in your language, you can communicate with people in other languages. So that's the vision, and parts of this are already doable. And I come to connections between human and machine translations in a second when I close. So the European research is already working with the W3C in projects like Multilingual Web, LT Web, for building a more international, globalized version of the World Wide Web that is better suited for localizing, translating content. And there's already a new standard coming out of that. That comes out of Europe by European funding and not out of the United States, not surprisingly. So we are witnessing now this breakthrough of LT, Google doing semantic search, Siri improving the iPhone, Google Translate getting more and more languages and so on, more and more companies improving translation technology. But this is only the beginning, because language technology will be the core, not the core, in the core of the IT of next generation, because the IT of next generation will be much better adapted to the human than this generation of IT. And European institutions have a growing demand. As we heard today, the European Parliament the European Commission is setting up machine translation. They are using things from our projects, actually, hiring people from us, which is great, and European Parliament and other organizations are following. Let me finish with answering the following questions that I think are now the crucial ones. That's the question, can it be done? Now, I've shown some visions, but can it be done? And the second question is, will Google do it for us? And the third question is European research and industry able to do it? How long does it take? Is it affordable? So European LT research is really very strong. In all of your countries, there are very strong centers that are partially hampered more by fragmentation than the centers by the US. And there's something else, so we can compete successfully. There's something else. In the United States, when a project is over on machine translation on a topic, then the research is by far not over. Here we expect then this is over, we have funded it for a while, let industry take it over. If they don't, maybe it's not mature enough. In the United States, at this point, the Defense Advanced Research Agency, DARPA, steps in, and we would not have the internet, we would not have the autonomous land vehicle, the driverless car, we would not have the GPS system in the world, we would not have Siri without DARPA then funding it by procurement for a long time, just buying it because the US is afraid in this strategic area to be behind. If we don't do it, maybe somebody else will do it, so we do it. Yeah? And this is hampering our research again and again. So Google Translate was started by a European, by the department, by a doctoral graduate from my group. Yeah? And then the next guy he hired was a Hungarian, also from our center. The next they hired was some guy from Los Angeles, but actually he's from Aachen in Germany. And the next people are again from Europe. So our people are there and doing all of that. Why couldn't they do the same thing here for European good? Yeah? So why don't we try to keep it here? So European language industry is big, but it only combined because it's fragmented. It's SMEs, small, medium enterprises in all of your countries, many of them, and they need a chance. And they don't have a chance because it's fragmented, and I hope that the speaker after me will say something about exactly that problem from the Nokia point of view. If these people had a platform in which they could plug in their services, like the translingual cloud, then they could unite and have a chance. But against the big platforms from the US, they don't. And this is something where policy making should step in. So we can do it. My conclusions are: deploy today's translation technology for automated inbound translation. That means information that was mentioned before, what it means, for the people themselves, like Google. That can be automated already. It is already. Google Translate translates more than all human translators in the world combined. So then deploy and extend today's translation technology for machine-aided human translation and for automatic translation with post-editing by humans in suited areas. Develop new platforms for large-scale combinations of automatic and human translation. Let humans and machines work together in more productive ways. And prepare and start a massive collective push in research quality. So the components are mother tongue, language support, second language learning, human translation and interpretation, sufficient technology support for all European languages, machine translation for all tasks that can be automated, and those are many, many, and the combination of automatic and human translation, and that can be both commercial or voluntary, crowdsourcing. There are two organizations, Translators Without Borders and the Rosetta Foundation, working in catastrophe areas and for social causes with thousands of translators who contribute translations free. And the same way that people contribute to the Wikipedia, you could, if you now do useful things, let's say like the discussion of citizens among each other, try to activate, mobilize these resources also for good purposes. So why do we think, and that's the last slide, why do we think that quality translation technology is now at a point where we can experience a breakthrough? In the first phase, translation technology relied on linguistic rules. It was mainly linguists and some computer scientists that programmed them. In the second phase, it was mainly statistics. Powerful machine learning methods for extracting patterns of translation from millions and billions of already translated sentences. But it didn't get to the meaning, and it didn't get at rare constructions very well. Yeah? The statistics fails in things that are rare, and unfortunately, or fortunately, creativity allows us to produce new stuff, yeah? Which is in the beginning always rare. Yeah? And so now we come to a point where we have powerful tools for that, for learning and for rule writing, but now we need to get at the obstacle, at the barriers in meaning. And how do we do it? Two ways. One is we team up with professional translators. So now we are, maybe too late, but we do that. We integrate the professional translators with their deep knowledge from the beginning on in our research projects massively. That helps quite a bit. Secondly, we now have so many semantic resources in the world, not just Wikipedia, but also the databases derived from that. Yeah? Linked open data, so much semantics is there that machine translation can slowly use this world knowledge around the world on the globe also for helping to disambiguate translation. That's usually what semantics is needed for, to find the right translation among several ones, and that will help us. And so this will hopefully help us to break the barriers. and to do translation more like humans do it, like Algirdas Saudargas mentioned, and not just look at algorithms that we already have. Costs and time, is the plan affordable? I would think yes. It will cost less than one single national freeway, let's say, between Paris and Marseille. You know how much it is. Yeah? It costs, and so if we do all of that, yeah. But much of the work into the programs that was mentioned already is budgeted but not allocated. So we have Horizon 2020 with lots of funds. We have Connecting Europe facility with lots of funds. We have the regional funds. But within these funds, language is so tiny. Yeah? So please help from building up pressure. It's not getting new money from the taxpayers, it's only spending it wisely because it has been already allocated. Please, all of you, help making sure that the money is spent wisely on one of the core issues of Europe. And how long will it take? Setting up the first infrastructure by procurement, which is in parts planned by Connecting Europe facility, will take a few years. Carrying out the needed major research will take maybe 5 to 7 years. Taking care of our language with research and technology in general will take as long as we want to keep our languages alive. It's the same as with a roof on your house, and with railways, and with harbors, and with airports. In that sense, not the major push, but keeping it alive. It's our languages. Work will never stop. Thank you very much for your attention.
Dėkoju, gerbiamasis ponia Hansai Užkuraitį, už jūsų nuoširdų ir vertingą pranešimą. Iš tiesų,
Thank you for your sincere and valuable presentation. I believe that new technologies and inventions are changing our lives. And since today, we are discussing language technologies, namely in creating new information technologies that help to translate into one or another language what we're trying to say. It may significantly contribute to the better quality of our European citizens' lives. Now I would like to give the floor to our last speaker today, member of the Executive Board of the Association Digital Europe, Vice President for Government Relations of Nokia Corporation, Mrs. Kaisa Olkonen. And the topic of her presentation is ICT as a key enabler of cultural and linguistic diversity. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear members of the Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored and very happy to be able to give some remarks from the business point of view to this discussion. I'm heading Nokia Corporation's government relations team. My background is in legal profession, so I'm a lawyer, and during my close to 20 years of a working life with Nokia, I have been responsible for ensuring that Nokia's digital services businesses are compliant with any local legislation in Europe and elsewhere for quite a few years. And today I'm speaking partially based on that experience, but also as a member of the board of Digital Europe, which is an association representing 57 multinational companies active in the ICT field, as well as 33 national trade associations representing, again, more than 10,000 companies in the ICT field. The members of Digital Europe employ more than 2 million people and have a turnover of more than 1,000 billion euros. I counted that it's 12 zeros in that number, so a very sizable turnover of ICT business. When I think back many years when Nokia started on top of manufacturing mobile phones, which is a very familiar business probably to everyone in this room, when we started thinking of also providing digital services associated with the handsets, we had some internal discussion regarding what the internet actually is and how it is global and how it is actually quite much in English. And we discussed whether it would be possible and desirable to only deliver those services in English. Of course, as a lawyer, my input to that discussion was that, well, in Europe it's not possible because we have very strict legislations here and there regarding the fact that consumers have a right to get the services in their own language. But when we made our decisions, that was not at all the decisive point. The reason was that it was very obvious that consumers actually do want the services in their local language. We have some examples from the early times of the internet when some normally US-based companies didn't localize their services. They only had their English-speaking version available, and in some countries, innovative and fast, local companies started a similar service in the local language, and such services very quickly overtook the English-only services. So very clearly, already in the early days of internet services, consumers voted for their own local language. On top of that, also the local content is a key. We run music services, and in many countries the share of local content versus the Anglo-American content is more than 50%. And also in Europe, in many countries, the foreign content is actually not only Anglo-American. In Finland, we, for example, also like to listen to Italian or French or Spanish music. Interestingly, according to some statistics, in some English-speaking countries like New Zealand and Australia, the Anglo-American content is representing a huge part of the content, so there's less local content than in many of the European countries where we don't have English as the first language. I'm not sure if any statistical conclusions can be drawn based on that, but I find it quite an interesting detail. So it's really important to offer both local language and local content to local consumers. Nokia today is very active in location and mapping services, and they're of course offering all that in the local language is absolutely a core importance. The local contextuality is everything, and of course all the services have to be also done in the local language. But of course it's complex and can be costly as well. It has been mentioned here today earlier. Nokia as a company, of course, has a long experience of doing localization of software. In our handsets, we have tens and tens of software versions available, and that, of course, means that we need to write that software many times, and if we have any bugs, any errors in the software, fixing that will take, for example, 80 times changing a software because the language version is always different. So, of course, it includes a cost, and it can be complex. So how can companies that are operating across Europe or across globe like we are then manage that complexity? Technology is there to help, like we have heard today. But unfortunately, of course, it's not cheap to expand one's operation from one country to another. A Finnish SME estimated that expanding its operation in digital services to a new country will cost 2 million euros. And you can understand that for an SME, 2 million is a big investment. Even for Nokia, it is a big investment. Even for a bigger company, it's a huge investment. So clearly not supporting or incentivizing expansion. But in internet services, technology can help. When we have had our internal discussion on this, it has been obvious, based on the views of our engineers, that in the internet, we can only have one back-end technology, and then we just localize, we call it a skin, the interface, the user interface that's visible to the consumer, so that decreases the cost and makes it easier and more economical and more scalable to actually localize all the services. So that is something where technology definitely helps. The bad news is that this does not help if the local legislation requires us still to change the user flow processes that are written into that back-end part of the service. And that leads to the discussion that was already touched today as well on the digital single market. In Europe today, we have so many different local legislation that in practice we can't use all the economies of scale technology would offer because local laws require us to change the service country by country, so basically implement the services country by country. So you could think that this could be managed by just following the strictest law, but it's not that simple because it's not a question of being stricter or less strict, it's just different. The processes and the use of laws have to be just different. So we can't decide that, okay, we will follow the most strict law and that solves the issue. It doesn't, because there are so many differences anyway. So clearly there is single market for hardware products. That's obvious. We sell our devices, the handsets are CE marked and we can sell them everywhere. That's good. But the digital single market is not there. That is not existing. Entertainment is often used as an example, and I will use that as well, because music is one of the services we have been very active in during the past years. So to reach all EU consumers, we need to launch the same service 27 times, now 28 times, and relicense the same musical works 28 times as well. This book is something any company that wants to launch a music or audiovisual service in Europe has to study and understand and comply with. So this is a guidebook on collecting societies in Europe, listing all the societies you need to deal with and all the rights you need to acquire from the societies. For any SME, this is an impossible task. A big company needs to have a lot of lawyers to understand this, and I used to be responsible for that, so I know. So that's one of the challenges we have. Unfortunately, these and all the other complexities in local rules hurt the small countries most. Companies during these tough times have to carefully consider all the investments they make, and they need to try to understand the opportunity offered in any particular country before they actually start investing. And that means that many companies either never launch their services in all the European countries or then very slowly. And of course, companies naturally often start with the biggest countries where the opportunities are the biggest and where it's the easiest to get the return on that investment. So this means that small countries, the consumers in small countries either don't get these services at all or then get them later, which of course drives them to use the English-speaking, let's say, often US-based services. Also, the startups in small countries, of course, have a huge obstacle for growing and creating new jobs and creating new revenues and income, because they won't be able to easily expand their services to a bigger group of consumers. So both the consumers and the SMEs, especially in the smaller member states, suffer from this situation. So, in conclusion, music is definitely not the only challenge we have. We have other key challenges, for example, in terms of the local copyright levy systems in Europe, in very different data protection legislations in the EU countries, in taxation, intermediary liability questions, consumer protection. So when someone mentioned yesterday evening that we don't have many delegations from the bigger countries here, I thought that, well, it doesn't really matter, because I think that this is a core call for action for the smaller countries, actually, because they have the biggest interest in pushing forward the digital single market in Europe. It's not, unfortunately, enough to solve the language issue. It's absolutely fantastic news that we have so much new technologies available already to help in that translation challenge in terms of the machine translation, but also in terms of limiting the parts of your service that need to be actually localized. That's very good, and that will definitely help the situation and bring the situation forward. But it's only one piece of the puzzle, and we need to work on all the other pieces of the puzzle as well in order to enable that digital single market that will then truly give an opportunity for all players, big or small, in all member states, to enhance their own business and at the same time support the local languages and the local culture. Thank you.
Dėkoju gerbimajai poniai.
Thank you, Mrs. Kaisa Okinen, for your very interesting presentation. We are seeing once again that the approach of businessmen and business companies to this problem is a very specific one and a very pragmatic one as well. They look into the costs, the benefits, cost return aspects, investment return aspects. And ladies and gentlemen, please take note of the fact that we should promote multilingualism from the community funding. Thank you once again. And I have information that 5 participants have comments or questions. Please be reminded that up to 4 minutes will be accorded to each floor. And I would like to invite all of the 5 persons willing to make comments. The floor is open for comments, and I give the floor to a member of the Committee of Culture of the Spanish Senate.
Mr. President, dear friends, representatives of different parliaments, I would like to thank Seimas for preparation of this meeting, and I would like to thank especially for all the speakers for great presentations that they had. As the President of the Commission of Culture of the Senate of Spain, I would like to present some comments from the perspective of all the interventions that we heard today. Digitalization of the languages gives us great opportunities in the area of education, but also access to culture, access to automatic translation and repositories gives us great opportunity to have access to any books or any other materials on the in the internet. Digitalization goes even more farther, that affects all the industries, creation and also distribution, and we need to adapt to this new reality. In being aware of that, is that the Commission of Culture from the Senate of Spain, we have created special representatives of authors, distributors, and managers of author rights to face all the challenges that might be visible in the future, because this is also related with the use of new ICT technologies. We have already organized 2 meetings in June and July, and we have 2 other planned before we finalize our work. During those debates, it was quite visible that editorial sector in Spain has great share of market in Europe and also in the US, and there are some subjects really related with digital formats. I would give you a number of examples that I could tell you, for example, to localization in the search engines on internet, and also fight against piracy and protection of their copyrights. And we need to concentrate on the special standards and special formats of metadata that will be compatible with different systems, and also concentrate on protection of author rights. And also we need to concentrate on avoiding the situation when 2 or 3 companies worldwide will dominate the internet. ICTs are transforming our form to create, to grow, and access the culture. So I hope that we'll be able to use those technologies to improve communication with people that speak different languages. Thank you very much.
Dėkoju, gerbiamai kolegė.
Thank you, colleague. I give the floor to Chair of the Committee on Culture and Education of Croatia, Mr. Bunjic.
Thank you very much. Dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you for organizing such a conference where we have the opportunity to see the future of our languages, how they will be present. I think that my speech is somehow very similar to the previous one. So we are mainly based on the machine translation, but in digitalizing the language. and cultural heritage, we should also think of tools, especially software tools, which help artists and culture workers in each country to present their work in a much faster and much less costly way than it is used. And so the work of this cultural work can be seen by the others. Although today we think that with the technological improvement, the storage is infinite, there should be a problem with the repositorying of the material, especially multimedia, because we have to preserve all our cultural heritage and think of the future works which will be put on this repository. So I agree with one of the previous speakers that maybe somehow a central repository and computer space should be present, and even a search engine specialized for the different languages in the European countries. Also, there is much of the work to be done in different countries, but we do not forget that even in our countries there are different dialects or people, small villages where we should preserve the songs, the folk tales and everything else. So there's not just the barrier of different language, because we in our all countries have the task to preserve the cultural heritage. So I think that in the digitalization, somehow the repository, dispatch and the technology should be improved. And then there is one task which remains, of course, for now, although machine translation can improve in big steps nowadays, but the literature work, the books to be translated, I think there should be a lot of people work, because there is a style of the author, not the spirit of the language. I hope that for, let's say, our smaller languages, what we saw on the one slide from Professor Hans, that there will be improvement, and we can all see on the internet every other language and what it means. For now, there is also a problem on the internet, not just on the language, but somehow even the different letters cannot be spelled exactly in the internet in different languages. So once more, I am strongly support the idea of the digitalization and the European approach to search engine, repository, and working in each country to save the cultural heritage in a digital space and to show it to the other countries, because this is one of the best things that European countries should give to the world, is diversity. Thank you very much.
Dėkoju, gerbiamas.
Thank you, colleague. I give the floor to Chair of Culture, Education and Science of the Italian Parliament, Mr. Gallen.
Buongiorno.
Ladies and gentlemen, before becoming the chairman of the Education Committee of the Chamber of Deputies of Italy, I was minister in my country and Minister of Agriculture. And I still remember the enormous importance which was given in our debates to the issue of biodiversity, and lots of funds were allocated to programs to protect biodiversity. There were also a condemnation of GMOs because they were saying they were putting biodiversity at risk, but still there are many different species of corn which are put in our fields, and there are very few qualities of soja. So there is little biodiversity in that field. And so there are different examples we can make, and I don't think this is much different. When we speak of languages, a Venetian language disappeared, and It was replaced by the language of Tuscany in my country. The Dalmatian language is died out, and many more will be extinguished. And I think that even more important, the protection of this kind of diversity, the language diversity, is more important even than the different kind of seeds we may have. How can we help to protect this important diversity? And I ask myself, and I ask you, how many resources are allocated to these new technologies by the European Union? Some of our countries, some big businesses, multinational companies devote money to research, but to fund research, and to create a system which could be a competitor to the American GPS. Enormous, huge resources have been allocated to do research in this field so that Europe may also deploy a similar system. And we haven't done as much to protect, to have research in the field of our culture, of our wealth, and cultural wealth. And I believe that the European Parliament, European Commission should really think that money should be allocated to agriculture, to biodiversity, but also to culture and to the protection of our traditions. And I would like to think that this may end up in a written document, as Lithuania has done. But I know that there are practices, but in the end, I think that something should be written down. It's not enough to have practices.
Dėkoju, gerbiamas kolega.
Thank you, colleague. I will now give the floor to a member of committee, chair of Committee on Human Rights from the Latvian Saeima, Mrs. Murniece.
Thank Lithuanian colleagues for organizing such a successful event. In this session, my special thanks go to Professor Uskureit. Presented findings are worrying for such nations and such languages as Latvian, Lithuanian, and other. Having regarded what was said concerning development of bigger and smaller languages, it is essential that none of the languages vanish in a digital gap, that none could be lost in translation. However, language situation within the EU is diverse. Not all of the official languages enjoy the same favorable conditions, especially in their own countries. For instance, the Latvian language, which is the only official or state language in my country. Latvia has regained its independence only 23 years ago, and during the Soviet occupation, Latvian was regarded as an inferior language to Russian. The situation of Latvian language in Latvia that is heavily affected by the increased pressure of Russian language is it is not comparable with the situation, for instance, of German language in Germany or, for instance, the French language in France. That still causes the consequences of today, and we should think how to strengthen status of the Latvian language and of the Latvian language as the official language. And official language is a tool of society integration as well. Obviously, digitalization is one of the ways how to do it, but far not enough. For this reason, I strongly support adoption of the presented conclusions, draft conclusions, and kindly encourage you to extend your support as well. Nevertheless, it is essential for the European Union to think about measures how to ensure further development of the EU languages in all, I would stress out, in all segments of usage, including digitalization. Thank you.
Dėkoju gerbiamajai.
Thank you, colleague. The floor is now open to the representative of the chair of the Education, Youth and Sports Committee of the Turkish Grand National Assembly.
Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, it's a great honor to be among all of you today at the meeting of the Parliament committees from OEM member states on the occasion of European Day of Languages. As a member of Turkish Parliament, a candidate country to the EU, I would like to thank the Lithuanian Presidency and CIMAS for their kind invitation to this important meeting. As well as the other European language, Turkish is the strongest bridge between Eastern and Western cities and has an important cultural legacy and treasure with its thousand-year past. Now, world languages become universal with the support they do for science, technology, economy, trade, art, literature, and philosophy. Yes, English most preferred and most used in my country too. It's a necessity to learn English for the students of second class from this year, and then they have chances to choose more than one language and learn it. But the basic question is that, is it possible to create a form of digitalization that it can provide the same feelings that you have in your own languages? Poems, tales, historical stories, which are the extensive cultural heritages of these languages. The digitalization service will be inevitably and definitely an excellent contribution to protect the diversity of all kinds of languages. However, we should keep in our mind that language is not only a mechanical tool to communicate, but also an expression and the soul of the whole of the cultural entity. So I would like to contribute to our debate by asking the following questions. Can the digitalization of the languages be a great achievement for the protection of the diversity of languages? Can Google Translation or translation technologies can give the soul of the magnificent poems? As you know that Edgar Allan Poe's poem Annabel Lee, it says that it was many and many years ago in a kingdom by the sea that a maiden there lived, whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. And I'm asking now again, when the translation technologies give the passion and the soul of the poem, then it will be successful of the digitalization. Thanks a lot.
Dėkoju gerbiamai.
Thank you, colleague. I thank everyone who made their comments, and I will now give the floor to our keynote speakers so that they can floor their responses. Mr. Rossi, Mr. Užkuraitis, Mrs. Olkonen, please agree among yourselves who will take the floor first.
Thank you. I will first try to address some of the issues that came up And first of all, it was Mrs. Onhill made reference to the cultural heritage and assets, that it is important to make them available and give access to them, and also speakers of other languages could have access to them, and that they would increase their value. That's very true. And in fact, the cultural assets, if they are properly digitized, they are also very valuable and even commercially valuable raw material for language technology. Google knows this very well because their success relies on access to such resources, and that's why they volunteer actually to digitize books for the libraries. So they do it free of charge, but of course they take all the content for their own purposes to develop their own systems for that. So we should try to achieve something similar, some similar system mechanism in Europe, that we could make cultural assets better available, and at the same time use that material for improving technology. So I think that's a big challenge, and it's more of an organizational, institutional challenge. It's not a technology challenge. It's more of how to do it, how to implement, how to make it work. And I take from Mr. Polyuncic questions or his comment about search engines are very important. I agree on that very much. We have, for example, a wonderful start for a pan-European repository to cultural assets. It's called Europeana. Our department is also responsible for Europeana funding. And one of the problems now that Europeana has 30 million objects, it has 30 million objects from all the EU member states, is how to find them. And that has become the major problem. How do I find the object that I'm interested in? And we have, in that situation, you have to search across languages. So the object that I'm interested in may exist in the Bulgarian museum or in the Greek museum, but I may not be able to formulate my search in a way that I would find it. So I never even know about the existence of that cultural heritage asset if the cross-lingual search does not work. So we need to improve this cross-lingual search capability. That's one big challenge. And I very much agree with Mr. Galan's view that like biodiversity, that linguistic diversity is a sort of genetic asset by itself. It makes us stronger. So in the same way as genetic variety makes the populations and ecosystems stronger and more robust, so multilinguality we should not see only as a cost, but as a source of strength as well. Okay, thank you. That's all that I could think of answering.
Yeah, I would just like to add a few remarks on, first of all, the relationship of language and multimedia, other means. It's because that was mentioned as well by the Spanish as well as by the Croatian delegate. It's true, the internet, the World Wide Web is becoming very multimodal, very multimodal. So we get movies and pictures and sounds and pieces of art, things to look at and so on, and that's very rich medium. Yeah? In the end, and then on technology you get numbers and sensory data and all of these things. So lots of different types of data. But in the end, if you look at it, the way that keeps it all together for the machine is numbers, because for the machine it's all numbers. Whether it's a piece of art, it's a string of numbers. In the end, in the representation, a text is a piece of number. And for us, it's always meaningful. So when we talk about, when we talk about art, we talk about art. in language. So we search it. Or when we talk about movies, then we use language. There's no other means that we could talk about movies to each other than language. So in the end, yeah, with this, I mean, you're right, that's probably what you hinted at. Yeah? In the end, if you approach multilingual access to the internet and to all its treasures, at the same time you make it possible to conquer, to get at all the other treasures that are on there, the pieces of art and the movie and the movies, the music and so on, and you make it possible for people to talk about it. So I think that's very... and I also liked very much the Mr. Galland's picture of the biodiversity, although I have to say that the maybe if you have worked with language then for a while and seen the hundreds and thousands of words, and each of them a concept, yeah, an interesting concept behind there, and all the thousands of rules and exceptions that a language has, and then all the dialects and the 6,000 languages in the world. Yeah, so then in the end you see that's a picture, yeah, but language in itself has quite a richness in addition maybe to I don't want to downplay the little stuff that's in the DNA, but it's lots of information as well, but language is something special. And last but not least, I want to react to the Turkish delegate. And this is, I think what we should never make the mistake, and this is maybe also what you are hinting at, we should not make the mistake to ever pretend that our technology will be able to do the same creative interpretation of a piece of writing that a literature translator gets, because that is actually recreating literature and making it available. That's a transportation that goes far beyond meaning. And far beyond, but for much of the texts in the world, yeah, for business texts, for maybe 90% of the texts in the world, just getting to meaning. Yeah, right now it's only word by word. It's not getting at the meaning. Just getting at the meaning would already be good. But you're right. If you want to get at literature, it doesn't even stop at the meaning. Yeah, it doesn't even stop at the meaning. And there are all these little examples where if you get at the meaning, you get it wrong. In Germany, for instance, if you take a ticket, yeah, and before you can actually use it, you have to devalidate it, entwerten. But I think in Italian, you do validare. You do the opposite. And it's exactly the same thing that both people do, yeah? And so it's not meaning. Meaning would get it wrong, and there are thousands of these examples. Yeah? So where actually you need to go beyond meaning, but I think we will be able to do it, and we will not pretend to get into... That's one of the greatest challenges is to, like in any other field, yeah? In artificial intelligence in the 50s, people tried to recreate the human. Now we try to extend the human. We don't try to recreate the human. We try to give faculties, capabilities to humans, like searching through millions of pages in milliseconds, yeah, translating 57 languages that no human has, but we are not pretending to copy the human. So thank you for your remark.
Okay, a few comments from me as well. First, regarding the comment regarding how the dominance by 2 or 3 has to be avoided. We fully agree with that comment. Of course, internet should be open, and it should be based on platforms where smaller players can tap into the bigger resources other people have. Of course, our HERE platform, which is the navigation and mapping platform I mentioned, opens its interfaces so that application developers all over the world can utilize that. And there will be, and there are many of those platforms, and there should be proper competition between those platforms. Google is another platform, of course. So the competition between these kind of platforms should be functioning well, so that we have a functioning market there. Then another comment regarding piracy, a topic that was also raised by people here. This digital single market is also one way of trying to attack that piracy issue, also the privacy issue. So the piracy issue, our understanding is that if consumers have good localized, attractive, innovative services available, they don't use pirated content to that extent. Most of the pirated sites actually are English only, because of course those players don't invest in this localization. So if this legal services creation is supported and incentivized, we believe that that will also help the piracy fight. Technologies help there, of course, as well. We used to be involved in businesses where people were able to upload content to our services, and there are various technologies that can be used to stop people from uploading illegal content. So technology is there as well. And then regarding that human aspect, our mission in Nokia is to create technology that makes us more human. I don't know what the mission of the translation companies are, but as long as we are using human translators for translating the user guides of these devices, I'm a bit skeptical in using only machine translation for poems.
Dėkoju visiems kalbėjusiems kolegoms.
Thank all the colleagues. The presentations, discussions, and questions are over. So, colleagues, let me thank you for your constructive and fruitful participation. And now we will start consideration of the conclusions of our meeting as well as their adoption. Colleagues, members of parliaments, you had a possibility to get acquainted with the draft conclusions, and the first variant was sent to you on the 19th of September. The proposals of our speaker Sabine Kirchmeier-Andersen was attached to the draft conclusions, and you have also received the proposal of the European Commission. You could also find these documents at our document table. Let me remind you that the proposals and remarks regarding draft conclusions you were able to provide by noon today. Thank you so much for your active participation and good willingness in presenting proposals regarding the draft conclusions. We have taken into account all the proposals and remarks while preparing the final draft of the conclusions, and thanks to your initiative, I believe we have managed to design a qualitative document that foresees the guidelines of European multilingualism policy, that reflects the objectives both of the national parliaments as well as the European Parliament and the European Commission, visions on the issues of digitalization policy of its heritage. Could we agree upon adoption of the draft conclusions by general consent? I sincerely thank you all. If you all agree, the final text of the conclusions adopted, together with the summary of the meeting of the committee chairman, will be sent to you in the near future. This document will also be sent to the chairman of the European Parliament and European Commission. You will be able to view these documents on internet on the website of the Seimas of the Republic of Lithuania, namely its website of the Presidency of the Council of the EU. Ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely hope that the conclusions adopted in our meeting will serve to the development, to the ensuring the development of effective and long-term language diversity in the digital world. Our event and adoption of the conclusions is one of the necessary steps in consistent implementation of the full-fledged multilingualism policy. I do believe that you will present your conclusions to the national governments and that you will undertake the necessary parliamentary scrutiny measures in order to ensure a special attention to ensuring language diversity in your country. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude this meeting, may I, together with my colleague Audronė Pitrėnienė, thank all the speakers for most interesting and inspiring presentations. I thank participants of the discussions for their ideas and fruitful discussions, for your support and understanding in taking decisions, your proposals and your interventions. Let me also thank all the employees of the office of our Seimas, the staff of both Seimas committees, interpreters over there, up in the sky. I would also like to thank the staff of the State Lithuanian Language Commission and the Lithuanian Language Institute, everyone who has contributed to successful meeting of the chairpersons of the Committees on Education, Science and Culture and the Committees on the Development of Information Society here in the Seimas of the Republic of Lithuania. I thank you for coming to our capital, Vilnius. Let me remind you that those willing will be able to participate in the guided tour of the buildings of the Seimas. Certainly, if we had automatic translation or interpretation, it would make us easier for us to communicate. In this particular case, we will have a guide speaking English and French. The guides will be waiting for you at the entrance to this plenary chamber. Those who are not willing to take part in the guided tour, the buses will be waiting at the second building of the Seimas. Departure at 15:50, 10 minutes to 4. Members of the delegation who are going to take part in the discussion, in the excursion, the guided tour, will be able to leave to their hotels right after the tour. I wish you a successful journey back home, and those who have a possibility to stay in Vilnius for some more time, let me wish you most pleasant impressions. I announce the meeting finished. Closed.
Galima turbūt atsistot.